Welcome to Behind the Badge, a podcast of the Grand Rapids Police Department. Hey folks, this is Bruce Nimchik with Behind the Badge, a podcast of the Grand Rapids Police Department here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And today we have some special guests, and I'll have them introduce themselves. Go ahead, Neil.
I'm Sergeant Neil Gomez. I'm with the Grand Rapids Police Department. I am the Community Engagement Unit.
My name is Andy Habmeyer. I'm the owner of Hall Street Bakery and Wealthy Street Bakery right here in Grand Rapids.
I'm Christy Ritkowskis. I am a clinical social worker with Network 180 in collaboration with GRPD.
And my name is Sergeant Daryl Howard. I'm with the Grand Rapids Police Department, and I am the supervisor for the Grand Rapids Mental Health Co-Response Team.
Okay, Christy, let's start with you. What is your role in Network 180?
Yeah, so prior to doing this specific position, I was an access center clinician, so doing crisis, mental health, and substance use work. And then in July of 2022 is when I was approached to kind of help pilot this program between GRPD and Network 180. And basically what I do is ride along with an officer who is CIT trained, and we respond to any sort of calls that have any sort of mental health or substance use component to it.
Okay.
And kind of the goal is to either divert from jail and get people linked directly with mental health or substance use resources.
Okay.
So essentially like being a supporting cast to the sergeant and patrol officers.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Sergeant?
So our role with the co-response team is providing access as a first responder with the social workers. In the past, law enforcement's kind of only tool in the toolbox has been to arrest an individual or enforce the law.
Yeah.
And what's been great about this program and kind of the reimagining policing that's coming out in the past years is having more access to mental health resources and social work that can provide additional response besides just arrest.
Okay.
That helps the officers where they get frustrated going time after time to the same geographical location, same place, same time, same individual, and they feel like they don't have an end result except for to just keep going back or possibly arrest the individual. What's been fun to be a part of, and I've been fortunate to be part of this program for the past 10 months, is seeing outcomes that are more complete and more of a success for everybody involved. So it helps the community, it helps the person involved, and it gives a sense of satisfaction and completion to the officers because they see a resolution to the call.
Sure. Rather than just arresting them, you're helping them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
the goal.
That's the goal.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And then just how big is your team right now?
So right now there's 2 social workers,
Okay.
and then we have 2 primary officers on A and B rotation. But yeah, 2 social workers and then 2 primary officers, and then we do have other officers who rotate and fill in.
Okay.
So,
And then since you guys started hitting the streets, per se, like what does your call volume look like? How big is it? Is it heavy? Is it light? Or what is that starting to turn into?
It's been pretty great. The department has really bought into the program, especially the officers, recognizing that this is a tool that helps them not go back to repeat calls. So we actually have a very high call volume. We were just looking over numbers for the past couple months. Since January, we've been to over 800 calls.
Wow.
And those are calls from patrol officers, our investigative units, just people recognize that, hey, maybe there's something else going on here besides this person just breaking a law or an ordinance. Like perhaps there's some other resource we can provide, and that's what's been is looking into solutions to these problems.
Okay, so when you guys go to a call, like what resources do you guys have available for you? So if I was an officer on the street dealing with a mental crisis and I call you, what would be some of the tools that you have that you could provide to the officer and to the individual in crisis?
yeah. So historically, whenever officers would show up to the scene, if somebody was in a mental health or substance use crisis, it basically would be, we're going to have them go to an emergency department in an ambulance. So now we can really kind of delve into, okay, what exactly is going on? And the other social worker and I were able to look up the individual, see if they have active case management. We can look and see what their current service authorization is, and we can determine kind of how to go from there. So we can utilize the Network 180 Access Center, the behavioral health care home. We can utilize bringing them to their case management agency. We can maybe take them to the sobering center. We can take them to like unlimited alternatives. So there's so many different options that we have just because Perry and I have been in the system for a while. We know what's available. We know what's out there. And then we can give the individual choice on what they want to do. So if somebody is in a mental health crisis, we can say, we can take you to Network 180 Access Center, or we can maybe safety plan and have our mobile crisis team come to you, or we can take you to the emergency department if you feel that this is maybe a medical thing. So we just have so many different options available that we can really kind of offer to these consumers in need, as opposed to we're going to send you to an emergency department in an ambulance.
Sure.
And to further jump on that, what's been great is since we do have the primary officers, but we also have a lot of great officers that have really stepped up and helped with this program and bought into it. Since they see the same officers and the same co-response clinicians over and over again, relationships have developed.
Yes.
Yep.
Because it is a population that is struggling, so we're seeing that same population over and over again. So now they're coming forward to Chrissy or Perry or those officers, and even though they rejected resources in the past,
Yeah.
it's been great to see them, the success stories where they step forward and they're like, hey, today I'm ready.
Right. And those relationships are probably super important to break those barriers, right? Like, it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
easy talking about mental health crisis, and then talking to a stranger can be even more, scary to do so, or intimidating. But now that there is a relationship being built,
Right.
now it's able, people are able to start opening up to you guys
Absolutely.
and connecting in those ways.
Yeah.
Right. The expression of you don't judge somebody on their best or worst day. And when we come into contact with people, especially as law enforcement, we've always come into contact with people on their worst day.
Right.
And so to see them on the street later, we work down in the downtown area very frequently. So to see the same people, and then they finally come up to us and they approach us when we're walking through Hartside or up on Canal Park, and they come up to us and they go, hey, I'm ready today.
Yep.
That's a great feeling. That's a great
Sure.
resource to be able to provide.
Right.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and we'll probably talk about more of this with Andy, but
Yep.
when you can do things on your own accord, like
Yeah.
on your own, it's
Yes.
your choice. It's
Right.
easier to do, right? Like it's, and you guys provide that, I guess, beacon of light, or that lighthouse somebody can head towards to seek that help when they're ready.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And we always kind of meet individuals where they're at, wherever they're at in their journey. And if they're not ready for services or treatment, they at least have the tools or the knowledge of what to do when they're ready. And so if they're not ready to go into treatment, we might talk to them about, harm reduction, risk reduction, or what you can do if you feel, like you're overdosing or something happened. So there's so many different things that we can offer regardless of where they're at and their stage of change.
so just in that cruiser, you guys have tools and information
Yeah.
and resources available,
Yeah.
which, is huge impact for officers on the streets, and getting that closure out there, right? Sometimes when we respond to a call, we're just a Band-Aid for the time being.
Right.
Where you guys can
Yes.
follow through and not, create a Band-Aid, but create a full solution for the issue at hand. And a lot of these times are people with mental health crises that may not know how to seek help, and you guys provide that. So that's
Right.
really great about the Grand Rapids Police Department and what we do here, and thank you guys for being part of that,
Yeah.
part of that team.
We appreciate being here, and Grand Rapids is, for right now, is the only jurisdiction within Kent County that has a program like this. So really fortunate to have this here at GRPD.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So, you go to a person and you give them an option. How's their reception to that?
Most people, I'm going to say the majority of people are very receptive, they're very appreciative. They kind of like having different options, and I think the officers also appreciate, like, hey, this is great, we didn't know this was available. So the majority of all parties are really happy about it, and I think just like the citizens of Grand Rapids are happy that GRPD has implemented something like
Sure,
this.
sure.
So they're very, very supportive of this program.
We were talking about it today, and we sometimes we can't make it to a call as it's going on, so
Sure.
we can't act as that first responder, but we have been really good about follow-ups. We were actually talking about it when we were working on some follow-up cases today, just how appreciative people are of our follow-up.
That's great.
And just the fact that somebody out there knows that people care.
Yeah.
And that's been the big push, is like, it's just, you have to care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of closing that little gap of the follow-through of, well, what happened with this? an officer goes somewhere and they see somebody in mental crisis, and then they have to go to the next call,
Yeah.
and then we can come through a day or two later and care.
Yeah.
And just even that phone call Chrissy can make to that patient or that subject or that client and be like, how are we doing a couple days later?
Yeah.
Had a couple today.
Yeah. Today, call them, and they feel really good knowing that the officers care and that the officer is invested enough to actually make that referral, and they're just very appreciative of it. Like, okay, if this does happen again in the future, these are my options, this is what I can do. And so, again, it's been very, very widely accepted in the community.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, we have a success story here.
Yes, we
have
do.
Andy Havemeyer. Andy, maybe you could tell us your story.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, everybody. It's good to be here. So, so I've gone through all of the substance abuse, the mental health sort of issues, like everything that they deal with. Been in legal trouble and stuff before, but so yeah, my growing up was a great childhood. I went to college and kind of noticed that my relationship with substances, alcohol, drugs, and stuff was just a little bit different than everybody else's. And that just kept progressing years and years and years up until January of 2019. I had just lost my job because I was stealing booze and money and stuff and pills and all this, and lost my job. And because I lost my job, I lost my apartment. And next thing you know, I'm without housing. I'm homeless. There's a lot of intricate details to this whole thing that we can get into too, but
Sure.
But yeah, I was fortunate enough that here in Grand Rapids we have a great program called Guiding Light, which is a nonprofit that does recovery. So I finally had enough and went into that. So I've been sober for 5.5 years
Wow,
now.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Took a job at a local bakery here, Hall Street Bakery, and a year later I was GM of that location and the other location, which is Wealthy Street Bakery, and then opportunity came to take over them, and I've been owner now for 14 months.
Big
So
congratulations.
in that time, in that sober time, I also got married and two
Oh,
kids and bought a
fantastic.
house, and
Wow.
yeah, it's a pretty wild ride. I was telling somebody earlier today, like, it just becomes regular life, you know.
Yeah.
But moments like these make you appreciate how crazy it kind of is.
Sure.
But yeah, while you guys were talking, without any context, I didn't want to interject yet. But yeah, everything they said was right on. It's the knowledge of these programs, whether these people are ready or not at that time. When you're in either a mental health crisis or a substance abuse crisis or just in general, it's scary and intimidating to like look for help or know what help's out there. So just like the more they know, whether they're ready or not at that time, to know that there are these things available in your community, and like you said, people that are willing to help you facilitate these things, because you're like, at that time when I was like, figuring out what the heck I'm gonna do, I didn't have phone service at that time either, so you're like,
Yeah.
I don't even know how I would call these places. I didn't
Right.
have a car. I didn't have money
Sure.
to take the bus. I'm like, I don't even know how I would get to these places. I don't know this. I don't know that. But you're following up with these people and you're providing like, hey, we'll come get you. We'll bring the solutions to you, and you let us know when you're ready, because that's the biggest thing, is that person has to be ready. I mean, as you guys well know.
Yep.
Both mental health and substance, that person has to be ready to take an honest assessment of themselves, where they're at, and if they're ready to do something about it. Because this is an action. This isn't just like a quick pill, take it and you're fixed.
Yeah.
It's an action, both in sobriety and the mental health stuff, and an ability to look honestly at yourself and your relationship to drugs and alcohol, or like, hey, I always kind of felt like I was thinking a little bit different or reacting a little bit different to certain things. Maybe I should talk to somebody about this, but it takes that honesty to realize that, hey, maybe I'm not the end all be all here, or the only one with the right answers.
Took a little humility on your part.
Yeah, so I went for years and years and years. I refused to acknowledge like the elephant in the room that I knew was the cause of a lot of my troubles, and that was my substance abuse. So I went like the mental health route a few different ways and shapes, trying to look for that magic pill that would just make me not depressed or make me not use so much or make me inside, if I was being honest with myself then and looking back now, knowing that the substance abuse was the big, the thing driving all of my issues. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like chicken and egg. What came first, the mental health issues or the substance issues, or does it matter, right? It just one feeds into the other, which feeds into the other, which feeds into the other, and just further and further and gets you deeper and deeper in that hole. And until you're ready to like stop that cycle, it's gonna keep hammering you.
When was your first connection with Network 180?
This is before I got sober, but I also, my first real attempt at getting sober, my substance abuse and mental health had gotten so bad that I was suicidal. I was living in Chicago. One night I went to go buy a bottle and my card was declined, so I had just ran through like 60 grand in my bank account in like 7 months. And yeah, I was like, what am I doing here? And yeah, I had a noose tied and everything and stared at it the whole night. Ended up calling my family the next morning. They were kind enough to come pick me up and brought me to the emergency room because that was all that there was. I mean, this is 2017, so that's just the route that you went, right?
Sure.
And from there I went to Pine Rest, and then they kind of linked me up with Network 180, and I just wasn't ready. Like I did what they required of me to receive the services because I didn't have insurance at that point. But that was I wasn't giving any extra. I wasn't being honest. I wasn't. Yeah, the honesty of like the role that the substances played in it didn't come until much later.
Okay.
So any mental health professional that I dealt with before then didn't get the full story.
Now, when did you realize, okay, it's time? Like, I am ready. Like, and I just want some of these listeners to know too, like, maybe there's some identifiers, but maybe there's not. But at least for you, what was your identifier?
So there's two main things that happened. One is the Christmas before, so December of 2018. My dad told me, this is Christmas Day, he's like, you can't come around anymore. He's like, we know you're going through it. He's like, but it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Like we can't see this all the time. So that was kind of like chink one in the arrogance armor, I guess is what it was. And then having no place to go. So that I was like, okay, what are my options here? And after like sitting and staring into space and being like, all right, my mom's given me those brochures from Guiding Light for like 4 months now. Like every time she saw me, she'd hand me a brochure, and that's basically what you guys are doing for the greater community.
Sure.
You know, like the brochure might not be directly for Guiding Light, but it's for that there's help out there. There's options. There's options out there, right? So that was when I was like, all right, I'm gonna give this a whirl, see what happens. I don't know that I was 100% ready to get like sobriety was like my ultimate goal then, but I knew something had to change, and I figured, all right, I'm gonna give this my all, and it'll either work and great, I'm sober and life gets better, or it won't work and I can tell everybody, see, I told you so. So that's pretty immature, arrogant way to look at it, but that was the way I was looking at it.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so going from really low and conquering some of the things you had to conquer, like, was it just an overnight thing? Like, I can't imagine it happens overnight, right?
No.
It was a journey.
No, it's still a journey.
Yeah.
That's what people, and this might not be this is just reality.
Yeah.
Sobriety, both mental health sobriety and, or however you want to call it, mental health issues or dealing with them, and sobriety is a journey, and it is work.
Yeah.
Like, it's work.
Yeah.
Honesty is the foundation for both of those areas, in my opinion. Because until you're ready to admit that you have a problem, like that's step one of AA. But like until you're ready for that, whether it's like it could be an anxiety problem, until you're ready to like recognize that you have an anxiety problem or a mental health issue and realize, hey, this is kind of the baseline for all of these other issues in my life, you're not going to be able to attack it the way that you might need to.
Okay.
So yeah, it's funny. You know, I do go to AA at least once a week, and there's people that, you know, in their 40 years, and I'm like, how are, you know, in the beginning you're like, how are these people in these meetings for 40 years, and like, aren't they sick of hearing the same thing? But no, it just, these messages are like themes apply to you in every different stage of life. So now just because I'm sober doesn't mean I don't tend to be a bit of an asshole, right? There's things to work on always.
Sure.
And that's what
Yep.
this journey is. Like before it was just, I want to do this, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I want to do this. Now it's like, why do I want to do that? Is that the right thing? And then you make an informed decision and actually do it or don't do it, right? Before it was just like, this is what I want now. This is what I'm doing now. It was very selfish.
And I'm assuming the temptation can be there at times, like, and that's probably why people still tend to go to these meetings or to those
Oh, yeah.
resources that got them through that journey.
Yeah.
Because they need those reminders on a continuous basis.
Right. I wanted to build my accountability circle. So like I have the accountability circle through Guiding Light and all the people that I went there, and it's still kind of my clubhouse. I go back there every couple of weeks. I still meet with Brian Elvey, who's the executive director there now, but he was my life coach then, and the AA meetings and like all this. Like I want people, and everybody at work kind of knows my story, and also because it's, you know, been a few different places, like everybody in the city probably knows my story now a little bit, but no, I need that still. I need that accountability. So my family, my coworkers, I've been acting a little bit squirrely lately just because it's stressful. Work's been a little bit crazy and family life, and I had like 4 people reach out and like say, hey, are you okay? And
Gotcha.
and there wasn't like major issues or anything going on, but they could see that I was just a little different. And because I've been honest and open with them, they feel comfortable confronting me rather than old me. If they would have said that, I would have blown up and said, you know, you're the problem, not me.
Sure.
So it sounds to me like you welcome accountability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's yeah. Put it on me. You know, like I can recognize my weaknesses or my faults. So like before this sobriety, you know, it was like the famous thing of like going on a diet but not telling anybody, or starting to work out and not telling anybody, because then they couldn't say, oh, are you sure you should be eating that donut? Or, or I missed you at the gym this morning.
We've
you know?
never done that.
So yeah, now it's like this is a team effort. Like I have my crew now of people all around me, and that's what you guys are, the, you know, the police are, like the whole city can be for each other rather than just a finger pointing thing or you know, it's your fault thing. It's like let's be in the solutions game, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's great, what you're saying is you have broken down a lot of the stigma of this. Like you tell your testimony and your story of like how you came and what happened, and then how just the path you went down, and that there is redemption in that story, and like you bounced back. And I think for people listening, that if they're going through any struggle, like you just touched on, like man, that's real. Like
this is applicable to anything. This
Yeah.
isn't mental health or sobriety
Absolutely.
based issues. Everybody, if they're taking an honest assessment of their life, has something that they could or should or feel like they want to get better at or handle differently or whatever. So
and it sounds like it grew in the darkness is
Yeah.
kind of what I heard you kind of talk about, is like how all those things, like you talk about the magic bullet and all these other things you did, and like all these things happened in secret, no accountability, and like it worked. But as soon as, you know, you kind of turned some light onto it and like had your circle, there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah.
And that's a great story.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Very powerful.
the biggest thing for me at least, was when I went into Guiding Light, I was like, all right, I'm just going to do whatever they say. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to come in with these preconceived notions, because I was famous for before, whether it was therapy or AA or anything like this, like the minute I heard something I thought was a little hokey, I'd say, stupid. This is stupid. Like I must have said this is stupid a million times, right? But this time I was like, all right, I'm gonna attempt to go in with no preconceived notions, give this a whirl, and not act like I know everything. And that was the game changer right there, because like a new idea wasn't starting in the hole already by me saying that that's stupid, you know? So I know for a lot of people, when they're new to therapy or mental health stuff or whatever, it can seem a little bit off or a little bit hokey or a little bit sappy or whatever like that. But you know, I just tell them, or want to tell those, you know, anybody, like, give it a chance, give it a little while, and then make an educated. This is stupid.
Right?
Yeah.
So before you went into that, and now that you're on, was like the other side of it,
Yeah.
was there a point where you had to kind of cut off that old life, like all your old, because sometimes we'll have these conversations with folks, and this is good for me to know, where I'm like, you need to get away from those toxic people in your life. Like they're pulling you down, and nobody wants to see you succeed.
Right. That happens a lot. In my specific case, I was so isolated already.
Okay.
Like my friend group had just whittled down just by my actions. But there are certain people, well, not really anymore. My people now are my people, and even the ones that aren't sober are completely aware of my goals, my sobriety, what I'm doing in life, and supportive. So yeah, just in general, I wanted to level up the people around me and the people that I knew. Like if they were to say something bad about what I'm doing or what I'm saying, they don't need to be around, right?
Sure,
Like
right.
it's just like an assessment. If you're not bringing in a table,
Yeah.
what, you know,
Right.
I'm a strictly like results driven life now. It's a little bit stressful, and it can be, and I maybe need to take a mild step back from that at some days. But the biggest change in what's led me to like these successes, both in business and, you know, wife and kids and house and all this other stuff, is
All in 5 years, man.
all in 5 years,
Yeah.
man.
Let's-
Right.
Like the biggest thing, you know, when you're using or you're going through stuff, you can be very selfish. So it was very I deserve.
Right.
Very I deserve. Like, oh, I had a busy day at work, or I worked my butt off. I deserve a drink, or I deserve to steal my wife pills, or I deserve this, or I deserve that. So about 6 months into sobriety, I noticed that was kind of creeping into my head, or like, oh, I'm doing all right. I deserve to, not to drink or use or anything like that, but I deserve to spend money that I shouldn't, or I deserve to this. So to kind of nip that in the bud, it sounds simple, but it made all the difference in the world as I switched from I deserved to I earned. So I deserved was only my opinion, right? It was only my opinion. I earned, there was something on a piece of paper, like numbers that I earned. There was a compliment, or like, hey, you earned from somebody else. I still have trouble trusting my own opinion of myself, or just in general, because that's what kind of got me into a weird dark place and not great. So I live in a facts-based world now. Yeah.
Cool. So you were talking about your parents
Yeah.
earlier. You mentioned your mother giving you literature and your dad talking to you. And we don't think about it, but I'm sure it was a low point in their life, right? Too.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you, how do they feel about, you think they feel about you now?
Oh, it's great. Like I never, well, yes, there was a weird period, or not weird, there was a period there where we didn't have the best relationship, and that was purely on me, not because of them at all. But now, I mean, they watch the boys a couple times a week. I talk to my dad and mom damn near every day. They're a major part of our lives, and they've always been a major part of my life. So that's why I'm sure it was so difficult for them to see me, because at the time of like my major addiction, I was working at the family business. So my dad literally saw it all day, every day. And we'd have our spats about it during that time, and then I'd kind of placate for a little while or just get better at hiding it, or thought I was better at hiding it for a little while, and then I'd get kind of lazy and then we'd have another thing. But about a month and a half, maybe 2 months into Guiding Light, so it's an inpatient program. You're living right here downtown for 4 months. And they came to visit for the first time, and they physically looked better.
Really?
Wow.
Like
Wow.
I mean, here I was a 37-year-old man or whatever, but they're still your kids. You know,
Yep.
your kids are your kids,
Yeah.
right? And my brother had pulled me aside right before I was going into Guiding Light, and he was like, "Dude, you're literally like killing mom and dad here." So that was another real gut punch in time to do something. But yeah, my parents looked better.
That's
they
awesome.
knew where I was, whether they still didn't believe 100% that it was going to stick or whatever, and that was fine because I pretended before for longer
Sure.
than a couple of months.
Sure.
But yeah, it was that was pretty eye-opening.
Right.
And also, like now, and even then and today, you know, you see how, or I saw how my negative actions or whatever, can snowball downhill and has ripple effects into other people's lives too, right? Well, positivity goes the same way, or like positive actions or cool things happening has the exact same way. Like it can snowball uphill and have these ripple effects to other people's lives. So, I'm sure for them, it's just unreal to like have their son back, but have their son back doing well.
Yeah.
Well,
That's cool.
You probably don't want to admit it, but we're somehow related
Yeah.
through marriages and this
We
and
look
that.
alike.
We just look just like each other.
We have a clinician right here if you need to talk to her.
Right.
Yes.
But that being said, I mean, I've gotten to see kind of your journey a little
Yeah.
bit from the outside, maybe not directly, engulfed as a family, but seeing you at the coffee shop, sweating and
Yeah.
and full of anxiety and just like what is going on with Andy and just how families talk and they try to act like nothing's happening, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like
Yeah.
the role we were in. To the point where I'm on patrol and driving down Division when you're on your journey
Yeah.
to sobriety, seeing you on Division crossing the street and waving at you, to stopping at the Hall Street Bakery, getting a cup of coffee and talking to you behind the counter.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of a great journey for me to watch
Yeah.
your success, and
Sure.
it's very humbling to me to watch that. And
Well,
it's
thank you.
encouraging
Yeah.
to see that because everybody has something in their life,
That's
right?
so. Like I said, with building my accountability, I've shared or done, 10 or 15 different things, sort of like this in the past year and a half. And the more I share, the more people ask me about it, or more people talk to me, or more.
Yeah.
So there was when I first took over the bakeries, there was an article done in Cranes, which is like a local business journal, and it got shared. I can't remember. It was like 250,000 times.
Yeah.
I got letters from all across the country, from like Dick DeVos, from the president of Butterball, from state senators, from all this stuff. Like cool thing, right? All these people hitting me up on Facebook, being like, "Hey, I got a brother that's going through it. Me and my family are struggling. How to do this?" Or people being honest about themselves. "Hey, man, I'm struggling," or
Yeah.
this or that. Like, people aren't always willing or ready for the honesty, but when they hear somebody else with it does open a door for them to do it. Or like people love the honesty. They might not always love to be ready or like to be vulnerable themselves, but they love it from other people. And
Sure.
that's what I'm finding. The more honest or open I am about my stuff, the more people it reaches,
Yeah.
the more people that are ready to share with me or themselves
Yeah.
or their families or
Yeah.
whoever. Like, there is the stigmas or whatever like that, but in my head, the more dangerous stigma is like this, and this goes for all walks of life, addicts or not, the stigma of being vulnerable or like open and stuff like that.
Right.
Like, just share how you're doing that day
Right.
and be honest about it and see what sticks,
Yeah.
because everybody has something going on in their life.
Yep.
Every family
100%.
has something going on, whether it's addiction or mental health related or not. And the more people were able to share that, the more support you can get, or more people that have gone through it themselves, or
Yeah.
figured out a solution or not, or just an arm around, you need an arm around you sometimes.
Yeah, and what I really appreciate is your transparency, So speak to that person about the freedom that you experienced once you were transparent.
Oh, yeah. It's like, so from the outside looking in, people would see the physical things that have happened. So, like, the bakery, business ownership, buildings, house, wife, all that. And my wife might not love that I say this, but like my most proud moments are like those moments that hit me like that, where I'm like, dude, I just handled that way differently than I would have before. Or like the general ease of life, not wondering what lies or stories you've told, or like being honest about my intentions. Like I didn't realize how unsavory my intentions were with so many things in the past. Like,
Sure.
I'll help you. In my head, I'm keeping score, kind of thing like that. Now, I'm not some like saint or altruistic person now, but at least I'm honest with myself, and I kind of have an idea of my intentions going into it. But yeah, those moments are the internal growth moments stand out more, or are more of a pride point than anything, because without those things, the physical or like other things that people actually see aren't possible.
Gotcha. One other question I have, and it keeps popping up. For instance, we talked about accountability a little bit. Explain the dangers of isolating yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, it was like the deserve thing that was in my head. You're only dealing with one person's opinion, or like one person's view if you're isolating, and that's why you isolate, because I still have or had a good group of friends then too that would say some little things here and there, but if you're just not around them, or you don't answer those phone calls, you don't have to hear that you might be doing something wrong.
Sure.
So, and that's what, like you were saying with those follow-up meetings, it's not exactly accountability, but at that first meeting, the officer, somebody else is going to be checking in on you a couple of days. It is a little bit of accountability, or like, because it needs to be a push and a pull kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
you can't do all the work for them, like you're there to invite the desire for help, and give the tools for that help. So whether you're force feeding some accountability on them or not, it's there, and it helps, and like the intentions are good.
Yep.
Yeah.
So another thing, I'm thinking of the people who, come out of it like you did, whether they come out of drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, or both. So many times we hear stories of, they're off of it, and then an old friend sneaks in and says, "Hey man, come on, I got something for you," and before you know it, they're just hooked.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
So early in sobriety, it's a little more fresh or whatever in your mind, and there's a million. That's why you keep going to AA and stuff like that, and you keep hearing different things. Or that's where I do, at least. But like I said, step one is knowing that sobriety is the basis for all this that's happened to me.
Sure.
So like any sort of notion that I have that, I can have one or two, or like that sounds great to have one or two, a little bit of a pause and like playing that tape through, and just knowing that I just don't have that relationship with drugs and alcohol that other people do.
Yeah.
I am jealous of people that can and not overdo it, and not do it for a million days straight like I would. But I know that if I had one drug or one drink, I just would want more.
Gotcha.
And then the next day I would either feel like crap and know how to feel better, which
Sure.
would be a drug or a drink, and blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, I'm homeless again.
Wow.
It's like, it doesn't need to go just that fast, and it probably wouldn't go just that fast, but like, it could.
Right, sure could. So did you ever dream that you would have a bakery or two bakeries?
So No. I can't say that it was in my journal ever, like as a 7-year-old, like
Dear diary.
next to baseball player was
Right.
bakery owner.
Sourdough
No.
bread.
Yeah. Yeah, no. This kind of lends itself to what we talked to earlier, but my only like goals in sobriety have been to like continue to like work on myself. Like I said, all these exterior things have just been the next right thing to do that has popped up, or next opportunity that has popped up. So like one small opportunity that I took advantage of led to another one, led to another one, led to another one. It's funny how when you do what you say you're going to do, or if somebody asks you to do something and you actually do it, it's like responsibility begets more responsibility, begets more, which is a good thing though. But yeah, it was never like a dream. We have a family business up in Rockford that's kind of along the same lines, so I was kind of like bred into this, so
Sure.
it was a perfect opportunity, and the Lord has blessed me with putting these opportunities
great.
in my life.
That's
But
great.
yeah, there's no like grand master plan here.
That's great. That's exciting, though.
Yeah.
That's the American dream, right? People have their own business usually.
Yeah.
And you you're achieving it.
Yeah.
So before I wrap this up, I'd like to ask you,
Yeah.
anybody have any other questions?
I was just going to say that it's so powerful at least for me to sit here and hear your story, because typically when we see people out in the community, they're in the throes of addiction or crisis. And so we see this on a daily basis, call after call after call. And so it's just so refreshing to hear your story and to see somebody come out and be in sobriety and recovery and how well people can do. So we just appreciate you sharing that.
Well, thank you,
Because it's
yeah.
very inspiring,
Yeah.
for me at least. Like, okay, we might not see,
Yeah,
we're
you're
up-
not going to shoot 100%. But
yeah, even if we can make it different, even if it's one person, we are fine chiseling away and slowly chipping at it. And so, yeah, you just give us hope.
Yeah, like I said, you guys, I think that's like the perfect way to do it, because there's just so much ignorance
Yeah.
or like you're scared
Mm-hmm.
and you just don't know that there's all of these programs or people or ways to help available to them. So the more that you just hammer home that there's
Yeah.
opportunities, and then when they're ready and they have a knowledge of it. It's not, oh, I'm ready, and you're starting at step one and you like have no clue where to go or what to do. You've heard this before, and like, because I've been at that point where like I've said in the past, oh, I'm ready, and then you realize that, oh, it takes 3 months to get into a psychiatrist or something like that, and you don't even
It's
know about
frustrating.
Network 180.
Yeah.
So then you're like, screw this, and then you're back to
Yeah.
using or whatever like that right away. So
Right.
I think it's like a perfect approach to it, because it's just, the more people know that there's, like you said, people that care, programs that care, and there's possibilities out there, the better.
Yeah.
Well, shameless plug for Guiding Light.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what made you pick that one out of, besides Mama?
So she had a friend that whose son went through the program, and like I said, that place is literally like my clubhouse.
awesome.
Whenever I'm feeling a little squirrely or whatever, I'll go down there and hang out.
Great.
They speak my language, but it was no BS. They make you earn it, or they make sure you're for real, and if you're for real, they will reward you like none other with, because there's all these steps to the program and transitional housing after, and like a whole crew and like alumni that you're a part of and all this. It's just I already told them, I was like, I will go door to door for you for the rest of my life. Yeah.
That's cool.
A couple of my last questions is maybe just a couple here. Andy, if there's some words of advice or encouragement that you can give to either the listener that is coping with those issues, or a family member that is looking for help, is there any bit of advice for that? And then number two, if somebody's listening or needs a phone number to call, maybe you guys can help provide a way to get a hold of you guys to seek those resources too. So Andy.
Yeah, like we said, sit down, take an honest look at yourself, or honest look at your relationships with drugs or alcohol, or you know, where you're at. There's a better way to live, whether that's sober or this. Like, if you're feeling some sort of way, there is better days, and there are programs for you to help you get to those better days, or like introduce those better ways to you. So hopelessness sucks. Like, it's scary. It's like not a way to live. So if you can get yourself a sliver of hope that there are better days out there, and then do the work to reach out to the programs that are available to introduce you to those better days, like, there's a way, man. It's possible.
That's fantastic. And as far as contact information?
Yeah, I think just educating yourself, knowing what's available. Obviously, Network 180, 336-3909.
That's a 616 exchange.
616, yep. Kind of the hub for Kent County. So if anybody has questions about mental health resources, substance use resources, developmental disability, call that number.
So what's that number again?
616-336-3909.
Okay. And you have a website?
Network180.org.
Got it?
Yep.
Network180.org.
180.org.
Great. Well, if no one else has any comments, appreciate you joining us. Officer Gomez, Andy, Chrissy, Officer Howard, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And we hope you have a good day, and we thank you for joining Behind the Badge, a podcast of the Grand Rapids Police Department. You have a blessed day. You've been listening to Behind the Badge, a podcast of the Grand Rapids Police Department. If you're interested in joining our team, please visit joingrpd.com. That's joingrpd.com. Thanks for listening.